So we've got these really cool walnut Queen Anne chairs, but the upholstery is really old, and the underside, like the furniture straps, are completely gonzo. So I'm gonna teach you how to take that and then transform it into this glorious look. So you're gonna need a couple of things. I use batting. Probably don't need that much of it. The foam, obviously, your upholstery. Here's what the seat looks like when it's popped out, and you can see, like, this is old, so it's actually got hay or inside of it, which they use for padding, and then the old straps. But once you pull all these little tacks, if you're looking at yours, maybe, stapled, but it's really not that complicated. You just want to start off with a clean surface. So I use this guy. It's a staple and tack puller, and then I make it nice and clean because I don't like hitting the new staples onto old metal because it bends them, and then you end up having to do it again. You do want to check before using this that it's not bowed or warped or cracked. You want to start with a good sturdy one, which this one is. So anyway, we're gonna get going from here. For those of you that actually want to see things being disassembled, so this is a old seat bottom, and as you can see, the straps are completely gone and the upholstery is pretty abysmal. But I like to just kind of rip the stuff out of the way when I can, and I'm using this tack and staple puller to get these tacks up. Hopefully we're gonna have a good solid seat bottom when we get done. But it's kind of fun. Like there's hay. Alright, so I've taken all the tacks out of the seat bottom, and I want to work on, yours may not have this, but if you have an edge that is just slightly curled down or has a little bit of an angle to it, that's going to be the top side. So that's the side that we want to put this webbing on. So this is, what I'm showing you now is if you don't have springs on the chair. So if you've open this up and there's springs on it, then this is not the video for you. But if you open it up and there's no springs on it, then we're just gonna put the webbing. Now this is important because this is jute furniture webbing, and with the black stripes, that's what you want for seated areas. There is one that has red stripes that you would use for like the back, but this one supports more weight. So this is what we're going to be using. Now, I know this because I've done one of these already, but I have room for 3 rows going vertically, and then I have enough room for 3 rows to go horizontally. The way I figured it out, I just wanted to go just straight line, but I wanted to cover this corner And it doesn't have to be like an exact. You can kind of eyeball this thing. But so I'm just gonna mark, there's one. This is if you didn't know, and this is what I did before I even started the project, just to make sure that, you know, I didn't would have enough room to do 3. But then I've got 1, which is about that finger, 2 and 3. And on this side, I'm going to staple high because when we go back in, we just have enough room for the 3rd one, but it's kind of going to come up to right about here. So I want to leave enough room that that I can make it work. So it's like super easy. So don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. You just need a little bit of a hangover, about 1 inch, because what we're going to do, we're going to fire staples this way, and then we're going to come back and fold it and fire more staples. So you want enough material that you have enough to put more staples in there. So I'm going to start like right here should be good. And again, it doesn't need to be like picture perfect. So I'm going to do 5 or 6, however many you have room for. So I am using an old school stretcher. Now, so I will forewarn you, you may think that you might be strong enough to like pull this so it's nice and tight and staple it, but you're wrong. You're gonna want to invest in a stretcher. This one is like from the 1940s and was my grandfather's, and I've always used it. I think it's cool. But they do have ones that are angled and they're not quite this big, and you just, it literally goes right here and you pull the material down and you're done. With this one, we will have a little bit more waste, but I get a little nostalgic about it. But you want to find probably about this angle for me, and then all we're going to do is just pull her tight. And you want, let me have it too far up. You want it to, when we're done, you want it to kind of like drum beat tight. That's why I'm saying you can't Superman it by yourself. You think you can, and I thought I could, but you would be wrong. But that's nice and tight. And then I'm just going to cut some more material. But see, the thing that stinks is then, you know, I've got this, and it's essentially just going in the garbage. So we'll put that on the side. But I mean, it's nice and tight. It's got a little bit of a drum sound, and we'll just fire 5 or 6 more, or 7, however you're feeling. And then really the same thing. I just want to leave enough space so that when I'm weaving this side that I can actually get in there. So that looks about good to me. And this one, we don't need to stretch tight. And then lift ourselves enough room for that this time. Kind of learned my angle last time. I was a little bit too high. Did you hear that? But it's nice and tight. So boom, that's done. And after I'm done using that tool, I always cut so that I don't compromise the integrity of that, trying to, you know, accidentally use it. I know what you're thinking, like rocket science so far, right? But see, I've created just enough space. And again, it doesn't have to be like perfectly matchy, because when we do the weave going horizontally, we're going to get all the stability that we need. That's done. Take my tools, seem to be about the right angle, like right about here. And this is where the newer angled one would be nice. But I used to watch my grandfather use this one, so it's just cool. And I figured I'd teach you on the simplest of the tools. But if you're not nostalgic, I would buy. They have one that like it has a little break and angle. So when you're under here, I mean you're literally just pulling like this, and it pulls everything tight. It is a lot easier to use. But again, I just like the nostalgia of mine. And this is why I cut. So I cut the 3, and I already know. So I've got them on that side. And again, you can, go and make pencil marks this way, but I'll just do it because I know that I'm going to end up just a little bit in this row. I give myself a little bit of spacing. Yeah, I mean just slightly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to weave this way first, and it doesn't matter. I mean, if you want to do it over under for the first one, it's okay. Just make sure that I'll show you. So here's the first one. We'll get some staples in her. Like so. And then it's the same process all over again. I know this is getting really exciting. But you just want to find your angle. Mine happens to be right about here. And that may be a little bit too loose, but Craig has some tricks. So I can put this side more. Push it down a little bit more. That should be good. And then right away, I'm cutting off the section with the holes. I'll go ahead and tuck this over. Can you hear that? That's what you want to hear. That's a good sound. Now, it may be a duh moment, but because we went under, over, under, this time we'll go over, under, over. So it's just the opposite of what we did last time. Just get it like right there. Looks good. But it really seems more complicated than it actually is. So, it's an intimidating project on paper, but it's really not that bad. And you know, just take your time. I mean, this stuff doesn't come to everybody naturally. I mean, if you don't have an air stapler like I do, you know, you're not gonna be firing as fast, and you know, it can be a little bit more difficult. But you know, just remember to relax and breathe, and it's gonna be okay. And we'll tuck, fire more. Huh? Still sounds like a drum. All right, now I know this is going to get complicated, but I messed up because I probably should have considered that I would have to go under again going this way, but it is what it is at this point. So I always do things like this. This is what I was just telling you to. All right, so now I've got the webbing on the chair bottom done. So now it's time to cut out our foam. So I'm using 2-inch high density foam, and I had a big old sheet of it because we use it a lot. But it's really, really simple. I'm gonna leave just a slight overhang in the front, and then I'm just gonna trace the pattern on the foam. Now, I don't have a fancy foam cutter, so it might be easier with people that do not to have as much waste as I'm about to have, but I use a normal bread knife, and I've been doing that for a very long time. If you're doing it this way, don't get it too close to the edge. You can if you need to use this piece, but I mean, if there's no way to, you know, use more area, I guess is what I'm saying, then it's better off to do it a little bit in the middle, because it's tough to cut with the bread knife if you're, you know, using a really small spot. So I'm gonna start just cutting this in the back. So I'm gonna cut this whole piece so I can just deal with this one section and get rid of the excess. But I mean, it's really that easy. You just want to make sure you're cutting fairly straight, because we don't want an angled cut. And now essentially I'm just following the red lines again, just trying to pay attention to keep my knife vertical or straight up and down, so I have a nice cut. See? Isn't that lovely? Yes. And voila. And you thought foam was going to be hard. It's not. So now it's time to put everything together. So you've seen me do the webbing. We cut the foam, so we're going to place that over it. This is batting, and I always use it when I'm upholstering something, because it just makes everything so much easier to work with. It also will make everything look nicer. So I cut this down into a 24-inch section, which is okay because this is an antique chair, and this chair bottom is pretty small. Normally I would be cutting this in a 27-inch section, and I did the same thing with the upholstery. So lengthwise it's 27 inches, and then you know, going vertically it's 24, just because I didn't need to do 27 inches on this one, but for most chair applications, I mean, if you've got like a regular sized chair that you're doing, you want to cut it in 27-inch increments. This one is just, like I said, I mean, you can already see, I mean, I've got the foam like at full height, and I've got plenty of room to work. Now with this, because we've got you know, the kind of a stripe pattern, I just want to make sure that it's going to be fairly straight. The way I do it is I eyeball it in the back. So I've got a flat surface, and I'll just push my fingers down, and I'll look for a pattern, and then I'll adjust from there. And we are pretty daggum straight. I mean, this could move just a little bit more. And then I just want to kind of give it a general eyeball, because I'll look at the back. I also look at this top, but like I'm running my finger right along one row, and it just seems to be maybe a smidge. You just don't want it to be like glaringly off. I mean, if you're a little bit off, it will be okay. But if you're way off, and you don't want this thing like this way. So I'm gonna I use this Scotch spray adhesive Super 77, but I'm gonna do the foam first with the batting. And then get this stuck down. Like so. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the upholstery. And don't overcomplicate it. You know, I've done this quite a bit, so I'm not really as afraid, but you know, it shouldn't take you 19 hours to make sure that, you know, everything is like super duper perfect. I mean, you can usually tell if it's like way out of whack and just make some adjustments. This is that's pretty good. I think that may be just a hair higher. That's all right. So grab it, turn it around. Make sure I've got enough air pressure. Get the seat straightened out. And we've got that nice and tight. It's gonna look really good. So I'm gonna fire a couple staples in the middle. I'm gonna do the same thing on the back side so this doesn't move. And then I'm going to just do the same thing. Just pull over a little bit. And like with the stripe situation, I want to kind of make this row about the same. So I'm going to pull until it looks a little bit even. And then once you get closer to the corners, it's going to dip a little bit. But that way we won't over pull, so we won't have lines going all over the place. Let me flip it back over. I'm going to leave the corner for now, button that up at the end. And I'm pulling this, trying to get it straight back. So I'm not pulling at like an angle. And once you get to the corners, it's gonna dip a little bit, which is okay. And again, I'm not going all the way to finish the corners quite yet. get this back done, and then we'll work on the sides. And you can actually do the sides first. I generally do these front and back first, and then I go sides. So it's just personal preference. Now see, we've got still got the hay on it, but we've got a nice smooth contour to work with. And then once we get the sides done, we'll get this little wrinkle out of the way. But I'm going to give myself a little bit of room to work the corner. So my first staple is going to be probably right about there. And on the sides get pretty quick. Sorry, I'm going to pressure up. Sorry, I didn't think you'd want to listen to the air compressor going off. So anyway, I'm back to the corners. And I'm going to do both sides first and then tackle the corners last. But again, I'm going to give myself a little bit of room on this first one. And then I'm just getting this tight. You don't have to like He-Man stretch it, but you do want it to be, I think most upholsterers call it taut. I just know it just needs to be tight so that the foam curves nicely. Alright, so now we'll give it our final inspection. And I'm pretty happy with it. I mean, maybe you can see these lines, but I mean they're pretty daggum close. And there's the back, but there's this green line. This one was the first one that I fired, so that one's a little bit out, but I don't know that you'd ever be able to tell. So working with batting, we're gonna fire staples into the corners and tuck it, but I'm also gonna show you how to cut it away, because what I don't want is this real thick corner, because it won't sit on the chair frame properly. And these are kind of going inside of the frame, so the corners don't have to be absolutely perfect, but we can hide them pretty well. Just firing a little bit closer, and then you're gonna end up with like this. And see, we can tuck most of this in, so you won't be able to see it from the outside. So I mean, I'm happy there, but I need to get rid of all of this excess fluff. So what I'm going to do is, you can see that there's like the fold is here and here. I'm just going to cut down that fold, and then I'm going to cut away from it, and that's just going to take material away so that we're not stapling all of that batting, so that we can have a little bit flatter surface, so it's not going to bow or stand up when we're done. So I've got that done. I'm just going to fire a couple staples in here. Get that guy out of the way. I always like to do 2 rows, and then my cutter, and that one's done. And corners are the trickiest parts. I will tell you that you just take your time. I mean, you want to just, like I'm doing, I'm just using my finger right now to kind of pull to see where the corner is. So I can tell already that I'm going to have to fire a staple like right here to get this thing to turn where I want it. And then the same thing on this side. And I'll just turn my back. I'm just going to get a little bit closer. I'm left with this guy, which I can deal with, because like the crease of this corner is almost like, once we get that in the chair frame, you won't be able to see it. So that should be good. But there's my folds again. So we'll cut and then cut away. So we're just trying to get much of this material gone as we can. So there's that. Couple rows. Cut. Peel this away all right. See, it's not so hard so far, right? And then again, I'm just going to do the same thing in the back. I'm just going to kind of play around with it for a second. And it just looks like I may need 1 staple right here. But you see how like it comes down, and I want this tuck to be underneath, but I don't have a lot of material over the edge. And again, I'm just going to cut to get rid of some of this excess. And just take your time with this excess stuff. I know that I'm cutting quick, but you really don't want like real thick corners, because when you go to screw your chair back in, if it's too thick, you'll need to get longer screws, which, you know, is okay, but sometimes it doesn't sit on the frame quite as flush as it should, and it just doesn't look good. So it's just in the little details. But like with this, because I've gotten rid of the excess material, I mean, it's fairly flat and flush with the rest of it, so it's not going to be, you know, a lot higher, causing us problems when we put it back on the frame. And this corner is already pretty good. I think I'm going to put probably 1 more staple right here just to help it fold over a little bit, and I think it'll be good. Yeah, that's like perfect. See how it's going, and the tuck is like almost completely flush. So I'm good with that. So again, we'll cut away some of this excess. You don't want to go by the by, about a finger, maybe a finger and a half length down. You don't want to go like all the way down because you won't have enough upholstery to pull the corner tight, and that's going to be troublesome. So just watch how far you're actually going. See, I'm still about like a finger, maybe a finger and a half away, because I've made that mistake before and it's not fun. You're trying to figure out if I do staple just this close. But see, it gives me enough material to fire into, and bam, just like that. Just like that, you got you a nice seat.